that section, small topic is there that we'll do. And today actually Hanumalal could not able to take. Tomorrow I'll be taking 8:30 to 10. So the remaining, whatever the fourth unit remaining content is there, I'll be able to finish. So today we'll do a revision of which we did yesterday in the last class. We'll do this revision as well as Great Plate Megali. So this is the understanding of microbial biodiversity with cultivable and uncultivable bacteria. So understanding microbial biodiversity will be analyzed and understand by knowing its characteristics. If we know the characteristics, that then only we'll be able to understand how they are closely associated or how far they are associated. So in this context, in fact, we have finished this one, but I thought of explaining you with the images. And that's what I have gone with this one. There are a few slides in this one. So first, we'll see the organisms first. Cultivable bacteria, the bacteria which can be cultivable in the laboratory. So first, morphological characteristics. If we can grow the bacteria in the laboratory, in the Petri plate or in liquid medium, then we can see their morphological characteristics, how they will grow in the plate, what will be the color, what will be the elevation, and and how they will stain in the gram stain or AFB staining, different kind of staining, and what is the shell shape, whether it is or it is a cockeye, and how they are arranged, strepto, staphylo, such kind of things. All the morphological features will help us to understand the divergence. Okay, and to understand this morphological features, they need to be pure culture. In the sense, they should be grown in the laboratory. Okay, and morphological characteristics are two types. Basically, one is microscopic characteristics and is growth characteristics. Microscopic characteristics will tell you what is the shape of the structure and what is the size of what is the arrangement of the cells and what is the gray, there's a staining status. There's all those things will be coming in the microscopic features. Whereas growth features, you will be getting what type of colony that you have. Just see, these are the different colonies. These are the different colonies. There is a growth morphology. Something is, these bacteria are grown. These bacteria are grown on the media, and based on the features. See, there are some pigmented bacteria also. There are certain pigmented bacteria also. That is one of the feature. So see, this is the entire form, and this is a wavy form, and this is a hyphal form. This is a complete hyphal form, and this is the elevation. This is a raised one. If you see on the plate, this is a raised one, and this is a flat one. You can see this is a convex, and this is a ombonate, and this is a curinate form. Generally, your E. coli will be convex form, and your bacillus will be flat form. And at the top, see, sometimes even though so what happens here, these are the filiforms, and this is a curled, and this is lobate. All these things we can observe in the plates in the microbiology laboratory. So based on these observations, based on these observations, we can divide them into groups. See, this, if it is a rhizide type of colony morphology is there, most of the time it is going to be actinomycetes. It is going to be actinomycetes. And if it is a convex nature, that is mostly it is going to be the E. coli over there. Raised form, it is mostly Klebsiella. And here you can see in this case, here you can see this, the raised colony is there. If you can see this one, this particular one, this is a raised colony. And here, even in this case, pigmented one, the colorless ray you can see here over there. So this is the colony morphology, which will give us the information, about their characterization. If you know the characterization, then we can We can classify them, we can characterize them into different groups. And microscopic characteristics, hope you did this experiment. See, these are the gram negative and gram positive bacteria. Gram negative bacteria, see, these are the short gram negative rods. Most probably that could be E. coli. And here the other side, you can see it is the gram positive rods, and they are arranged in chains, or there could be a sheath. You can see here there is a, at this particular site here, there is a space in between the two cells, but still they are arranged in a single lane. So it could be because of sheath. This is a and see, this is a, there are some polymorphonuclear cells. This is a blood stain. Blood has been stained in this case. So this is a bacilli, basically gram positive bacilli in this case, and this is a gram negative. This is a morphology, a microscopic observation, and you can see this is a capsular stain. If you see the Klebsiella, that also will appear in the same thing. And see, this Staphylococcus aureus will appear in this state, Staphylococcus aureus. And here there are some pink rods. There are big pink rods. They are the acid Mycobacterium tuberculosis. The sputum is collected here for the AFB staining, acid for bacillus staining. So here what happened, in the sputum is contaminated with Staphylococcus aureus as well as Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Mycobacterium tuberculosis, because of acid fucsin, that is pink color, and because of your gram positive bacteria, but your Staphylococcus aureus, it will appear into blue color. So these are the capsules. Capsules generally they don't take the color; they will get easily disappear. So it will capsules will appear something like this. This is called. That is about morphological characteristics. Based on the morphological comes under two categories. One is microscopic, second is external characteristics. That is growth characteristics, how it is growing. There's a how the colony is growing on the plate, and how it is growing on the media, whether it is a suspended growth, whether it is a pellicle growth, what kind of growth it is showing. That comes under the morphological characteristics. Then chemical characteristics. What type of fermentation metabolism it is performing, what type of metabolism it is performing, what kind of carbon source it is utilizing, and what is the waste material that it is releasing, what enzymes that it is producing, what metabolites it is producing, what antibiotics it is producing. All those features will come under the chemical characteristics. Everything, it's a metabolic characteristics. Generally, we call it as a metabolic characteristics. What is the carbon source? What are the enzymes? What are the end products? All those things will come under the chemical characteristics. See, these are some of the chemical characteristics. In fact, you can see this particular one. Here, this Enterobacter E. coli will ferment lactose. This lactose is one of the carbon source. Lactose is a carbon source. Otherwise, other bacteria does not, even human being does not ferment this lactose. We cannot utilize it. So, as the ferments that one, the acid is produced. Lactose, by fermenting the lactose, acid is produced. And you know, this lactose, this acid, whatever the acid is produced, that will change the pH of the media, and the pH indicator gets changed its color. It gets its color changed. And here, this eosin methylene blue media, this is eosin what is this? So eosin methylene blue media will give a green shine. That is a typical characteristics of E. coli. And in Mekong agar, it will give you a typical red color colonies. So this is its fermentation characteristics. And gram-positive bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus. The other day I was mentioning this is Staphylococcus aureus. It is catalase positive. It is a catalase positive and coagulase positive. What is coagulase stands for? Coagulase, when you take the serum plasma, sorry, you will be taking some blood into it. You will be adding anticoagulant, and so that the blood will not be clotted. You will be doing centrifugation. You will be taking the supernatant that is called as plasma. Generally, as an anticoagulant is there in that way, it should not clot. But when you add the broth or a little culture of Staphylococcus aureus, it will be clotting. That whatever the plasma is there, that will be clotted over there, because the coagulase enzyme that is being produced by the Staphylococcus aureus. So these, whatever the fermentation patterns, the enzymes or metabolites, whatever it is giving, that is a uniqueness. If gram-positive bacteria, if it is catalase positive and if it is positive, it is a damn sure it is going to be the what you call your Staphylococcus aureus. So this will give you to differentiate from the other groups. Next, cultural characteristics. Actually, in case of morphology, we'll see what type of growth it is coming, whether it is a pellicle growth, whether it is a suspended growth, or whether it is a bottom growth kind of thing. In cultural characteristics, we'll be able to get what type of nutrient requirements are there for it. What type of nutrient? Like, see, the fungi will prefer the carbon source, more carbon source than that of nitrogen source, whereas bacteria will be preferring more nitrogen source than that of carbon source. And bacteria like Rickettsia requires host tissue to grow. Without host tissue, it will not be growing. In laboratory, it will not be able to grow them. And even viruses requires the cells for them. And oxygen is required for cyanobacteria. So light is required for all algal forms. Requirements will be characterized for dividing them into different things. Metabolic characteristics, as they comes under the biochemical characteristics. Already chemical we discussed. So metabolic characteristics presents at metabolic metabolic characteristics. Other day I was mentioning IMVIC test, indole test. Indole test. Tryptophan is one of the amino acid where the bacteria will be using them as a food. So some bacteria will cut the tryptophan periphery first, and they will leave the central core. That aromatic core they will be leaving. That is indole actually. So such bacteria are called as indole positive. Whereas remaining bacteria, they will first cut the central core. There's a aromatic chain they will break first. So such kind of bacteria are called as negative. There is indole negative bacteria. And different metabolic activities, whatever the bacteria's metabolic activities are there, actually this also will be considered under the biochemical characteristics. Next, immunological characteristics are antigenic characteristics. See, what we'll do, we'll be having antibodies with us, specific antibodies with us. So what we'll be doing, we'll be getting the cells, different types of cells, and we'll be adding to the antibodies that are specific with you. So when the antigen, whatever the cell is there, that will binds with the antibody and gives a precipitation or fluorescence or something, then it confirms that antigen or that bacteria is specific to that antibody, that whatever you are having. Example, see, salmonella, different types of salmonella are, forget about salmonella. We'll have an example, which is what we practice. This Plasmodium. Plasmodium, there are different types of species are there. Plasmodium malariae, Plasmodium falciparum, Plasmodium vivax. So out of 4 species, falciparum is going to be more dangerous. When you compare with other cotton malaria, there is another thing. So out of 4 species that were characterized, falciparum is going to be more dangerous. So we need to detect whether it is a falciparum species. So here there is a kit the falciparum antigen is imprinted in that one. Antigen is there. So if the patient serum is having antibody of this falciparum, then that will react with the antibody with strip, and it will give a precipitate over there. So this, if the antigen binds with the antibody, you will be getting a precipitate. That is called as precipitation reaction. That will come across in immunology later part. So this will identify that by incorporating antigen into the medium, that's a amount of antibody in the patient. See, getting antigen from the patient may not be possible because the falciparum will be sometime it may be there inside the RBC cell, sometime it may be there inside the liver cells. So getting that antigen may not be possible in that case. Generally, we will be collecting the antibodies which were raised in the blood. Okay, so here, based on the characteristics, antigen immunological characteristics, we'll be able to identify whether our specific species is there. If there is a Plasmodium falciparum which is going to be fatal, we'll do a specific treatment. Otherwise, if it is a Vivax, generally treatment is given for anything, but falciparum is a more dangerous, so specific treatment we need to go for it. Even the same case with typhoid. Typhoid, you have typhoid, paratyphoid, and that A, B, typhoid A, typhoid B, paratyphoid A, paratyphoid B. In such cases also, the immunological characterization is required. So genetic characteristics, we'll be collecting the DNA, we'll be isolating the DNA from the cell, and one will be sequencing it. Will be show you how they will do this thing, and then in the sequencing itself, they will do the sequencing of 16S RNA. If it is a bacteria, they will do the sequencing of 16S RNA, and they will compare the 16S RNAs which are existing earlier. They will compare. It is a multiple sequence alignment. After the multiple sequence alignment, they will construct a tree. It is which is called as cladogram. Here, if you are whatever newly discovered bacteria's DNA, if it is if suppose 99% similar to your some X bacteria, then we can call it is relevant or nearby to the X bacteria. If it is suppose 99%, if it is same with the X bacteria, then we can call it as that X bacteria or strain of X bacteria or something kind of thing. Okay, so this is up to here. Like we'll do the characterization of what you call your. There are some more things. In fact, wait. This actually these are overlapping. Actually, the pulse field gel electrophoresis will be using for this. Even whatever the genetic I told you, they are also for culturable and non-culturable bacteria. So first you try to understand what is this technique stands for. That's most important for us. So pulse field gel electrophoresis, in normal electrophoresis, what we'll do, this is agarose gel. In the agarose gel, there will be wells. In the wells, we will be putting the DNA for our choice. Then electrical field is applied. Then it is allowed to pass it. Okay, it is allowed to pass it. So what happens, because DNA is having a charge, DNA is having a negative charge in its backbone. So what happens, it moves towards the positive charge, isn't it? Migration takes place, and this migration is directly proportional or inversely proportional to its molecular weight. If the less the molecular weight, it will migrate more. If more the molecular weight, it will remain, it will go slow otherwise. So here the topmost bands that indicates they will be migrating bit slow. Okay, the one which is having lowest molecular weight will be migrating fast. This is the normal electrophoresis. Whereas pulse field electrophoresis, gel electrophoresis, and this is a temperature pulse. Sometimes temperature is also added over there. See what happens if you heat the gel. What happens if you heat the DNA? It gets melted. Double stranded DNA becomes single stranded DNA. And here, once the double stranded DNA becomes single stranded DNA, see, its topology or conformation of the DNA gets changed. The topology or some of the DNA will become short bubbles. A little fragment got opened over there, and some of the DNA gets bigger bubbles. That's this. It gets opened over there. Double stranded DNA gets opened. So wherever if the G is more, then generally that does not get that easy opened. Due to mutations, if it is having one particular DNA is having less DNA, less GC content in it, so it gets opened more. And if the one DNA, if it is having more GC content, it does not get, or it gets very little open. And when pulse field is it is not continuous electricity supply, it is disturbed. It is a disturbed power supply, like it switch on, off, switch on, switch off, switch on, like this. It is a discontinuous power supply we are doing. What happens due to why like a discontinuous power supply? When you do the discontinuous power supply in the heat conditions, opening will be promoted. Opening of the double stranded DNA, it is actually DNA breathing. It is also it is called as, or we can call it as a opening of double strands, or denaturation of double strands. So whatever may be. So this pulse field electrophorese promotes temperatured pulse field electrophorese promotes the separation of DNA based on their GC content. Little amount of GC content. You can see here one example. Here the GC content, there is a little mutant strains. The mutant migration of mutant strains is different when you compare with the wild type of strains. Hope you understand. So the migration pattern of mutants is going to be little difference. Even little difference can also be differentiated by using the pulse field electrophorese. See, one example I will tell you, what we do routinely in our lab. That is plasmid isolation. Plasmids are basically three types. One is supercoiled. Some generally in the cells, how the plasmids will remain in supercoiled position, like your rope supercoiled. That is there. Sometimes what happened due to nuclease or some proteases, there one small cut is made on one strand of the DNA. That's what happens. It will become relaxed. Like it will become completely circled DNA. It is a double stranded DNA, but it is a circled DNA. So the third category, both the strands will be cut over there, so it will become linear DNA. So molecular weight is same. Molecular weight is same here. One is supercoiled. So because of supercoiled, it has made a short fragment. And circular DNA, it is a open DNA and it is occupying a lot of space. And linear DNA, still it is occupying space. So when you are separating in gel electrophorese, which will get separate first? Supercoiled or circular or linear? Somebody answer this. Which migrates first? Which should travel first? Is it a supercoiled or circular or linear? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Pawan? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Which? It is a supercoiled. Supercoiled migrates fast. What makes it to, see, all three molecules are having same molecular weight, same GC content, same GC content is there. It is a supercoiled. Here topology, conformation plays very important role. The compactness is very important. Here supercoiled is very compact structure. That's what it migrates first, far, isn't it? And here if the GC content is increased, it will become compact. If the GC content is less, it will become relaxed structures. So the compact structures will migrate higher than that of, see, there is no GC content in plasmid, whatever example I told you. But here in this case, genomic DNA of different species if you are collecting, they are having different GC contents. So we will be separating them based on the GC content. This is about pulse field electro. And this is another technique, RFLP. RFLP is also being actually, this is for unculturable bacteria. See that earlier this pulse field electrophores is also being used for both the things, and actually we'll be using pulse field electrophores more for unculturable bacteria. And this RFLP is also being used for unculturable bacteria, and it can also be used for the culturable bacteria. So what is the technique stand for RFLP? Restriction, fragment, length, polymorphism. So this is the genomic DNA taken, and it is cut with the restriction endonuclease, and it is separated in the agarose gel. It is separated in the agarose gel, and once it is separated, actually it can be up to here, that is fine. If you want a specific gene, whether the mutations have occurred in a specific gene or not, then what you will do? You will be doing a blotting in that one. See, in this case, one gene is up to this mark. This fragment is here, and one fragment is up to here. This could be 1.5 kb, and this could be 2 kb. So the sizes of the fragment, the gene fragment is differing here. That indicates that particular gene got mutated. That particular gene got mutated in this case. So this is RFLP, sorry, restriction, fragment, length, polymorphism. This is a very good, but the problem is if the genomic DNA is literally in your hand, suppose you got a sample, criminal sample, the semen sample or blood sample from the site of there is a crime, you got little amount of sample. So you have isolated the DNA from it, and you tried to do the RFLP, but see, the DNA sample is very little, and it was, I think, 1 week back, or I don't know when it was happened, and very little DNA was isolated in that one. So RFLP is not possible in that case. So for that one, what we do is see, this RFLP. This is an example. One more before going to AFLP. See, the RFLP in this particular allele, this particular this enzyme, this gene is being cut with 3 BAMH1 sites. BAMH1 is a restriction enzyme. BAMH1, Bacillus amylolicficans, there is a Bacilloamylolicficans bacteria produces this enzyme, restriction enzyme. Restriction enzymes are nothing but these are the enzymes which cuts the DNA, which is not from the same origin. Okay, that will come across in molecular biology, but anyhow, these are the enzymes which cuts the DNA. So in this particular allele, it is cutting at 3 points. So what happens here? The 1 fragment, 2 fragment, 3 fragment, 4 fragments you are supposed to get. 4 fragments, but these 2 fragments are very big fragment. These 2 fragments are very big fragment. Okay, and here this is the gene of our choice. 1 second. This is the our choice. So probe I am keeping over there. Okay, and in this case, the mutated allele here, in this mutated allele, see, this restriction site got mutated. This restriction number 2 restriction site got mutated. So what happened here? Now it is not cutting at this region. Restriction sites are like GAATTC. So in this case, this BAMH1 is going to be it is ulta of. Okay, so if even one base gets changed in that case, it will not cut over there. So even the one base changed in the sense it got varied, or variations are there in that particular thing. Variations are there in that particular thing. So what happened here? When you cut this allele, you will be getting 2 fragments. Whereas in this case, if you cutting a single allele, see, this is, you will be getting the 2 alleles. Whereas here you will be getting only 1. If it is a hybrid, you will be getting both the alleles here. Both the fragments you will be getting in this case. So even restriction fragment length polymorphism will help you to identify allele level differences also. Even single SNPs, it is called single nucleotide polymorphism. You will be able to differentiate at single nucleotide changes also, but this change must be in the site of restriction site. Okay, only if it is non, if it is whatever the mutation is there, if it is not falling in that mutation, there's a restriction site level, we cannot identify through the RFLP. For that one, we need to do the sequencing only. Sequencing is the only solution for it. So the other one is AFLP. RFLP, see, both the things, RFLP, AFLP are both almost same, but here RFLP fragments are amplified when the sample is very less. If you separate the little amount of sample through your electrophoresis, the fragments may not be appearing over there because there will be some sensitivity limits. Unless and until you get that much DNA, you will not be visualizing. So you have to increase. So what we'll do here, you can see here, the genomic DNA is taken with a specific enzyme, suppose EcoR1. You are cutting with the EcoR1. Then you will be here, you can see, you will be keeping the adapters. You will be attaching the adapters at both the ends. Adapters at both the ends. Adapters are, see, EcoR1 cut I have made over there. By using that EcoR1, I will be keeping some bases extra to it. This adapter will be serving as a primer for doing the PCR. It will be serving as a, so my another site will be added over there, then it will be doing the PCR over there. So by doing the PCR, I can amplify whatever the digested fragments are there into millions of copies. Now this the bands in the agarose gel can be prominent and very big. It is very easy to separate. This is the AFLP is the principle in your DNA fingerprinting. This is how, this is a GAA TTC, this is how it cuts, and this MSE1, this is a TTAA, this is a 4 base cutters, and this is 6 base cutters. And radio labeling technique, that is an isotope labeling technique or stable isotope technique. Generally, this radio labeling technique is useful for uncultured bacteria. Even culturable bacteria can be used, but there are other easy techniques. So why we should go is a very expensive and laborious technique, radio labeling. So we'll be using the isotopes. What are the isotope? First, what is the isotope? What do you mean by the one which are having the same atomic number but differs in their atomic weight is called as isotopes. And if they are having a capacity of radioactivity, the capacity of emitting the radio waves, alpha, beta, gamma rays kind of thing, they are called as radio waves, isotopes. And these radio isotopes, like this carbon dating we can do by using this one. And in case of for Hersh and Chase to confirm that DNA is a genetical material, they have used phosphorus and sulfur radioisotopes, isn't it? So they are the heavier molecules actually. Normal, they are instead of normal, they will be used heavier molecules. And see, if you want to find out what type of metabolism it is doing, see, carbon, how the carbon is flowing. If it is a culturable bacteria, you can grow easily, and we can find out whether it is indole positive or negative, isn't it? We can find out that one. But if it is an unculturable bacteria, how you will do? You cannot grow it in the laboratory. So you provide that's what you call your tryptophan indole, but with radioactivity. So you incorporate there's a radioactivity, radioactive carbon, whether it is side chain or in the core. If it is if you are incorporating into the side chain, if unculturable bacteria, if it is removing side chain and only side chain is removed and where core is remaining, it is indole positive, isn't it? And even the phosphorus P35 is being used as, to find out the metabolism of that particular bacteria. This is sequencing of bacteria. Have you heard about Sanger's method, DDXC method?
No, sir.
Okay. Here 4 types of bases are there. That adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine. Gentleman is joining now. So we are having 4 types of bases. In cytosine, guanine, and thymine. And here, what happened? The principle of normal. What happens when the DNA replication is going on, or in the your PCR also? See here, just see here. This is a template DNA. This is a template DNA, and this is the primer. This is primer is a complementary DNA which is binding on the template DNA. And see here, there is a free 3' hydroxyl region. This is a 3' hydroxyl region. And here, the new bases are being added. Here, new bases are being added over there. And these new bases will be complementary to the template region. Here is, suppose here T is there. Here, what should be added? A should be added. Here C is there, should be added. Here G is there, C should be added. So the complementary bases of template region will be added on the hydroxyl region of the growing strand. This is called as growing strand. This is a growing strand. And here, one more thing, 3' hydroxyl region is very important. 3' is very much important thing for the extension process. If you want to add new bases, if you want to add new bases to it, you must have a what? There is a 3' hydroxyl must be there. So the principle involved in this process is what they will do. Here it will be reaction will be done in 4 test tubes, 4 tubes. So in each tube, see, suppose if you are sequencing adenine over here, so 80% is going to be the normal adenine. You will be taking normal adenine 80%, and 20% is going to be D-deoxy adenine. What is this D-deoxy adenine? In this case, the 3' end, there is no group. I'll show you the image of you can see here. Are you able to see the image?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, in normal ribose, see, there are 2 riboses here. There are 2 hydroxyl groups are there here and here. And these 3', this is 3', because see, it is calculated from here 1, 2, 3. This, at 3', you are this is being added over there. And this what happens here? See, as it is removed, only the hydrogen will, if the oxygen is removed by the oxidation process, it is called as deoxyribose. See, here it cannot able to perform the continuation process, or this extension process. It cannot be able to do, because if the 3' hydroxyl group available over there, I'll enlarge it and I'll show you. You see here, this is very clear. This is a normal ribose. This is a normal ribose, and this is a deoxyribose. This is a deoxyribose, and this is a dideoxyribose. you can see there is no hydroxyl group over here. There is no hydroxyl group. As this hydroxyl group is lacking over there, it cannot do the extension process. It cannot do the extension process. So the reaction will be stalled over there. The PCR, whatever the DNA amplification process is there, that will be stalled over there. See, when you something is not, see here 3' hydroxyl is not there in that particular base if it is added. So suppose here adenine, you are doing the sequencing, you are finding out where the adenines are there. So what happens here? See, in the beginning, I told you we are using 80% normal adenine, 20% dideoxynucleotide. Okay, so whatever the, suppose 1 mole is going to be the normal and 0.2 mole is going to be the modified one. So it will add adenine in the beginning, because normal also we are taking. You may have a question, sir, DDoxy you are taking, why it is not stalled here? It will stall in the beginning also. You can see here, there is a one which is stopped in the beginning also, and there is a one which stops over here, and there is a one more stops here. Means the position of our adenine is at, see, you can see here, from the beginning, first at one position one adenine is there, 6th position one is there, and 8th position one we are having the adenine. And likewise, if you take cytosine, normally, as I told you, the same story here also. Normal cytosine is going to be 80%, and dideoxy cytosine is going to be 20%. And when you are using 80% normal, so here stalled over here, you will be getting a fragment, a small fragment you will be getting. And here you can see here, if the normal is incorporated, you can see here in the second case, if it's a normal is involved, it may be stalled at the third case. So here you can see at the third position, and another one you have at the end, there is around 9th position you are having. And the same thing you will be doing the guanine and thymine also. So manually we'll separate these. Earlier we used to do this one manual separation, but now see, this is even not being performed in 4 tubes. It is being performed in a single tube nowadays, and it is being separated based on the capillary electrophores. And here they can be separated easily based on their charge. Even single base difference also they can be separated. And see, this terminal DDoxynucleotides, they will be given different colors. And this adenine, DDoxy adenine will be given green color, cytosine something yellow color, this guanine will be something pink color, or some thymine will be something, some other color. So based on these colors, see, this is actually DDoxy, the principle of DDoxy electrophores will be incorporating. This is Sanger's method. This is called as Sanger's method. There are many methods, but this is the most approved and most advanced method. So by this method, we'll be doing, basically it is a PCR, but in PCR will be 80% normal and 20% D-deoxynucleotides. So D-deoxynucleotides will be terminating the reaction. That wherever that D-deoxynucleotide is incorporated, there it is terminating. So the short fragment is created. This short fragment is separated, and it will give you the information based on the size of that fragment. We'll be able to tell at that particular fragment this nucleotide is there. And this is also called as endpoint sequencing. And if you do the sequencing of 16 sRNA, this is a comparison of 16 sRNA sequence. 16 sRNA sequence, if you compare this, it will, what we'll do, there's a one sequence you got, 16 sequence you got in your hand. You'll be, see, remaining sequences you don't have with you. So you compare with the the sequences which are available in the database. The sequences which are available in the database, then you will be, the two here, Clustal W, or many other tools are also there, but more popular tool is Clustal W, multiple sequence alignment. Then it will give you how close these sequences are concerned. See here, these 100% similar. And see, this particular bacteria is having a lot of divergence when you compare with this bacteria. this 54% divergence is there. And these two are having 90% divergence. Similarity, sorry. So more the similarity, they will be closely associated. You can see here, Bordetella pertussis bacteria is there here. See, these are all Bordetella species, and this is Bromobacter. This is alkaligens. Based on the sequence similarity, more the sequence similarity, what we'll do, we'll take the sequence and we'll do the multiple sequence alignment, and we'll see where our unknown bacteria or new bacteria stands for. Suppose it is coming somewhere here, we can call it as a Bordetella hinzini. Otherwise, if it is not coming somewhere here, we can call it as a new bacteria. This is how new bacteria are discovered. And there is one more technique. This is generally mass spectrophotometry. You must be aware the proteins of the cells are made into smaller fragments and they are separated. And see, the smaller fragments are compared from the library. In the library, these sequences are compared. And it is not the proteins, fatty acids, membranes, all the biomolecules can be made fragmented by mass spectrophotometry, and that can be compared. Okay, so if you are getting some mass from unculturable bacteria, some bacteria's mass, if you are getting, there is a protein or membranes, if you are getting that, you can take to the laboratory and see, we can do separation by the mass spectrophotometer, and we can find out what the microorganism of that is there. And this is actually, the FAME is very popular for bacterial characterization. FAME stands for fatty acid methyl esters. See, these are the fatty acids. And if you have studied that bacterial cell wall structure, in bacterial cell wall structure, it is a unique. Nikhil Nayak is joining now. So it is a uniqueness of type of fatty acid in the membrane. So specific bacteria, some bacteria will be having some specific type of there's a fatty acids in the membrane. This see, actinomycetes do have separate different types of things, and halophiles do have separate type of fatty acids, and thermophiles do have separate type of fatty acids. Gram-positive bacteria do have separate type of fatty acids. Gram-negative bacteria do have separate type of fatty acids. So, but the problem is fatty acid separation in the membrane, that it may not be so easy. So, what we'll do, we'll convert into ester forms. See, this fatty acids cannot be separated in the gas chromatography. If you can convert them into volatile forms, if you can convert these fatty acids into volatile forms, that can be easily separated. So what we need to do here, methyl esters. See, this is a methanol. What we add, acidic methanol or alkaline methanol, we will be adding. So what happens here? Glycerol is separated and methyl esters are being produced. This is a methyl ester, and now it is a volatile, and it can be easily separated into gas chromatography. And these methyl esters, they are unique in organism. They are different in different organisms. See, and we are having a large amount of database. We can come based on this, in these organisms, this type of esters are there. This is the data available already. So based on that data, we can identify what is your organism actually. So we can, this is actually the most preferred method. This is, in fact, most advanced method to differentiate the bacteria, whether culturable or unculturable bacteria. But unculturable bacteria, the problem is the bacteria should be pure. See, suppose in a soil sample, if you are getting FAME, if you are doing a FAME analysis over there, there are different types of bacteria, and they are having different types of fatty acids in their membrane. And if it happens, you will be ending up with several different types of methyl esters. So Sherlock, actually, this is called a Sherlock system. Actually, here in this case, bacteria will be grown because we need to have a pure culture in it, and fatty acids are extracted, and it is by using the acid alcohol, it will be derived into methyl esters, and it is they are separated by organic solvent, and that is separated by using the gas chromatography. Okay, so these techniques which are being used for differentiation of culturable and unculturable, like biodiversity of culturable and unculturable bacteria. Okay, now the time is little, that's what. See, there is a one section which is called as Great Plate Megaly. What does Great Plate Megaly stands for? See, we'll be collecting a sample, we'll be collecting a field sample, environment sample, or some sample we'll be collecting, and the same sample, one will be taking a diluted sample, we'll be keeping a drop on a slide and we'll be observing under the microscope. Second, same amount of drop you will be plating on the plate. If you observe under the microscope, you will be able to see, suppose and around 100 bacteria are you are able to see, 99 bacteria if you are able to see, and but whereas in culturable plate, a nutrient agar plate, you will be able to see hardly one bacteria, 1% of the bacteria you will be able to see. This difference in the population, whatever the environmental sample you have got, from that one, 99% of the bacteria are not able to grow, and 1% of the bacteria are able to grow in the culture media. And this anomaly, this is called as the Great Plate Count anomaly. The Great Plate Count anomaly. The unusual feature it is. This is unusual feature. See, you must be having a doubt. How will we be able to see, sir, all the bacteria in the mind? See, there must be a artifact in the sample, that whatever. See, we have a methods to remove the artifacts also. Normally, what we'll do will be, whenever we collect this, we'll mix it thoroughly and we'll keep it we'll allow it for some time to settle down. So whatever the debris, sand and other things, they will be settling down. And even if non-settled artifact is there, like dust maybe there over there, in that case, we'll stain with nuclear staining dyes like acridine orange or ethidium bromide, such kind of things. So what happens here? Acridine orange will stain only your DNA, not your cell. Only the DNA is being stained over there. So wherever the orange colored spots are there, that only you will be counting. That is 99%. Whereas here, colony, you are getting only one. You are getting only one colony. Whereas the rest of the thing, there only 1% out of diluted sample is culturable. 99% is not culturable. This phenomena is called as the Great Plate Count anomaly. What are the reasons for it? Because majority of the bacteria are unculturable bacteria. Only 1% of the samples from a area are culturable bacteria. And there are some exceptional cases, hot springs, where almost 100% bacteria are unculturable. In normal conditions, maybe you may be growing at a very high temperature. Bagieta grows at 1500 degrees Celsius. That is very impossible to grow that in the laboratory condition. 1500 that's a media. Your agar does not grow, remain over there, nor your plate will remain at such a high temperature. Isn't it? So here there are certain bacteria which are unculturable bacteria. How to prove that there is unculturable bacteria? Whatever the sample that you got, diluted sample, you should isolate the genomic DNA. And here you should isolate here from the culturable bacteria. If whatever the 1x bacteria, whatever the genomic DNA you will get, 100 times you will get a genomic DNA from the soil sample. Whatever the soil sample that you got, that indicates that 100 times bacteria are there in the soil sample than that of your cultured bacteria. That means there are unculturable bacteria which are on this environment. There are unculturable bacteria which are surviving on this environment. And basically, cultured bacteria are two types. There are two types. One is facultative, uncultured bacteria. Facultative, uncultured. See, lichens, the examples, and parasites, viruses, this comes under the facultative. See, what happens? This unless until their this lichen cases, this fungi and algal association is called as lichens during the microbial interactions. And see, they individually they cannot grow. They will survive just as an entity on the earth. They comes in contact, these two things, once they comes in contact, they will be establishing their growth, isn't it? This in case of lichens, how it happens, it is the mycelium will be growing, fungi will be growing, and this algae will be studied inside here and there, isn't it? So these bacteria, these microorganisms actually facultative. They are they can remain unculturable for a longer while, but they can grow when the suitable conditions comes for them, or you can say that partner comes to them. And even the viruses are also, what happens here, if the outside the body are there, if the outside the host are there, they will not be growing at all. Just it is a unculturable microorganism. But once they enters into the body, they will be happily growing over there. And not all the viruses are the same case. Even the parasites also. Even though parasites also, there are certain parasites which got barriers and forgot about that one. But majority of the other things, what happens here? They should they should have a host for them. Otherwise, nothing. See what happened. There's plant pathogens. If they find coccidia, this mildews, powdery mildew, what happened? These pathogens, they will look for a host and they will grow on it. If they don't have a host, just they will be laying on the soil, sand, or whatever that is available, and it is like a unculturable microorganism there. It is an unculturable microorganism, isn't it? That's why that's how it maintains. And some bacteria actually they requires critical for their growth. Some critical inductions are required. Unless and until this induction comes to them, actually signal comes to them, they will not be growing. And see, the people are working on this. What is this signal and how this bacteria will be able to grow? And people are trying to make this bacteria to grow. And see, this signal is coming, going. That is a different thing. And so, how to explore this unculturable? See, it is proven that there are uncultured bacteria, and they are doing okay. Some signals they are getting. They are growing over there. Maybe they are growing slow. They are doing wonderful jobs. See, from great plate count anomaly, we come to know that 1% of the microorganisms are only we are able to grow. And second thing, from this growing bacteria, again, only 1% of the microorganisms are being exploited for different applications. Isn't it? To mean to say, from the total environmental microbes, we could able to grow and explore them by 0.1% only. So only 0.1% of the microbes is globe or whatever you call earth we are exploring. So how to explore this uncultured bacteria? So the best strategy what we use is metagenomics. What is this metagenomics? Metagenomics will fragment the DNA. Already explained you earlier. Will fragment the DNA. Will collect from hot springs. Will collect the bacteria where we can expect 100% uncultured bacteria, or where Antarctica, Arctic regions, or hot springs are even hot springs also will be located in cool regions. Arctic and see the entire area is cool, but this is a boiling water coming from the bottom. This is a hot springs. So from this you will be collecting there's a sample and we'll be isolating the genomic DNA from it, and the genomic DNA is made into fragments, and these fragments are cloned into plasmid, and that plasmid is inserted into the bacteria, and from the bacteria, when you keep it into the bacteria, now we'll be screening for the genes of our choice. And I told you one of the gene, tobramycin. There's a tobramycin antibiotic was developed by using this hot spring unculturable bacteria. And now this is highly demanded product. This tobramycin is a highly demanded product nowadays, and it is being so unculturable bacteria. See, a lot of work is yet to be done on unculturable. How we can a group of scientists are trying to work on this, how we best we can grow this bacteria, and a group of people are working on how we can explore the genes of this unculturable bacteria by constructing the this metagenomic libraries. Okay, this is about the reputation part and the great plate count anomaly. And tomorrow, whatever the remaining parts is there, a fourth unit, I'll be able to finish. One second.